Look at your dog's face the next time it wants something from you. Watch the eyebrows. There's a small movement. The inner brow lifts, just slightly, and the eyes go a little rounder, a little sadder, a little more like a human baby's. Most people call that the puppy dog eye. What most people don't know is that a wolf, for the most part, physically cannot do that. The muscle isn't there, or it barely is. And that's just the face. Underneath it, something even stranger has happened. When a dog holds eye contact with the person it's attached to, both of their bodies release a hormone, the same one involved in a mother nursing her newborn. Scientists didn't expect to find that. It was supposed to be a human thing. So the question this video is actually asking isn't, does your dog love you? That question can't be answered from outside a skull, not a dog's, not anyone's. The question worth asking is different. Why does a dog's biology, from its hormones to the muscles in its face, seem built to make you feel loved back? And is all of it actually built for that, or does some of it just look that way? Start with what most people already assume. Dogs split off from wolves somewhere between roughly 15,000 and 40,000 years ago. The exact window is still debated, but the direction isn't. A wolf became a dog. And the easy explanation for why your dog seems to adore you is simple: conditioning. You're the food source. You're the hand that opens the door. Wolves that tolerated humans got fed near camps. The friendlier ones survived and reproduced more. Multiply that by a few hundred generations, and you get an animal that acts affectionate because affection got rewarded. That explanation is clean. It's also incomplete because it can't account for a hormone loop that has nothing to do with food. And it can't fully account for a muscle that, as you're about to hear, might not have evolved for humans at all. Here's the mechanism the first half of this is built on. Researchers call it a gaze loop. Eye contact triggers a hormone release, and that release makes both parties want more eye contact, which triggers more of the hormone. Before 2015, the only place this loop had been documented was between a human mother and her infant. Then a research team in Japan, led by Miho Nagasawa and Takafumi Kikusui, tested for it between dogs and their owners. Here's the setup. Dog-owner pairs spent 30 minutes together in a room, and researchers measured oxytocin in urine samples taken before and after, not in real time, but as a before and after snapshot of the whole interaction. The pairs who held eye contact longer showed a bigger rise in oxytocin afterward, in both the dog and the human. That's already interesting. But here's the detail that makes it more than a coincidence. The same team ran the identical test with wolves, including wolves that had been hand-raised from puppyhood by the same kind of devoted caregivers. The loop didn't show up. Hand-raised wolves and their handlers didn't produce the same oxytocin rise from eye contact. So it's not that any canine raised by a human bonds this way. Something specific changed in the thousands of years since dogs split from that shared ancestor. Not a general animal affection story, a dog-specific one. Worth saying plainly, this was one study with a modest number of wolves, and at least one published commentary has pointed out that the wolf sample was small enough to question how confidently you can generalize from it. That's a fair scientific caution, and it's part of why the researchers didn't stop at this result. They followed up by testing which way the causation ran. Did the bond cause the hormone, or did the hormone build the bond? In a separate study, they gave dogs oxytocin directly through a nasal spray before reuniting them with their owners. The dogs that received oxytocin held more mutual gaze afterward, and their owner's own oxytocin rose in response. That's the evidence for direction, not just correlation. The hormone doesn't just follow the bond, it appears to help build it. A dog looking into your eyes is running something close to the biochemical loop. A mother runs with a newborn, not identical in every respect, but close enough that multiple studies from the same research group keep finding it. If that's the kind of thing that changes how you look at your own dog, this is a good place to hit subscribe, because the next part complicates the story in a way most videos on this topic skip entirely. Because the gaze loop only tells you something is happening between a dog's hormones and yours, it doesn't tell you what a dog's brain is actually built to want. For that, you need a different kind of study. One that measures the architecture underneath the moment, not just the moment itself. In the early 2010s, a neuroscientist named Gregory Burns trained dogs to lie completely still, unstated, inside an MRI scanner. 12 dogs, trained over roughly 2 years, just to hold position long enough for a usable scan. His team then ran an odor test. 5 scents per dog itself, a familiar dog, a strange human, and a familiar human, and watched which ones lit up the brain. Every scent activated the olfactory bulb, which just means the brain registered a smell. But only one scent activated the caudate nucleus, the region tied to positive anticipation and reward. Not the dog's own scent. Not a dog it lived with. The familiar human scent was the only one that lit up the reward center. And the person wasn't even in the room. Just the smell on a t-shirt was enough. 2 separate research groups, 2 separate methods, hormones in Japan, brain scans in Georgia, landing on the same conclusion. Something about a specific human registers biologically as reward. Now, here's where the story most people have already heard gets more complicated than the headlines let on. That eyebrow muscle from the opening, it has a name. The levator anguli oculi medialis. In 2019, researchers dissected the facial muscles of dogs and wolves side by side. Dogs consistently had it. Wolves mostly didn't. In wolves, it showed up as a thin, irregular scrap of fiber, if it showed up at all. When dogs and wolves were each given 2 minutes with an unfamiliar person, dogs raised that inner eyebrow more often and more intensely than wolves did. The conclusion made headlines everywhere. Humans unconsciously preferred dogs that could make that expression, so thousands of years of breeding selected for it without anyone intending to. Dogs evolved a muscle specifically to make their faces look the way a sad or vulnerable person looks because it worked on us. It's a satisfying story. In 2024, it got more complicated. A team at Baylor University asked a question the original study hadn't tested. What about coyotes? A wild relative of the wolf that never went through domestication. If the muscle only exists because humans bred it into dogs on purpose, coyotes shouldn't have it. They dissected coyote facial muscles and found the same well-developed eyebrow muscle dogs have, which flips the original explanation. The muscle probably wasn't something dogs gained through domestication. It's something wolves lost. It was likely already present in the shared ancestor of all three animals. Not a trait built for us, a trait wolves misplaced somewhere along their own evolutionary path. One that dogs and coyotes simply kept. The researchers on the newer study are careful not to overcorrect either. They note the muscle may have originally had nothing to do with communication at all, possibly serving some function related to eye movement or vision. With the human-directed use coming later if it came at all, that's still being worked out. So here's where that leaves the two halves of this video. The gaze loop and the caudate response are measured, come from independent labs, using different methods, and show a pattern that doesn't appear the same way in a dog's closest wild relatives. That part holds up as real current science with the normal caveats real science carries, including a legitimate methodological critique of the original wolf comparison. The eyebrow muscle. On the other hand, the single most viral dogs evolved this to love us fact of the last decade turns out to be a much older inheritance than the 2019 headlines claimed. Not because your dog performs love, because your dog's hormones and reward circuitry appear wired to treat its bond with a specific human the way a mammal brain treats its most important relationship. That part is holding up under real testing. And one piece of the story that looked custom-built for you, the eyebrow, the thing you were watching for at the very start of this video, turns out to be something your dog just happened to keep, while wolves happen to lose it. Think of it less like a performance and more like a circuit that only closes when both ends are present. Eye contact triggers the hormone. The hormone makes you want more eye contact. Cut either end out, swap the dog for a wolf, swap the owner for a stranger, and the circuit doesn't complete. It isn't one animal broadcasting affection at you. It's a two-way line that only works between the two ends it runs through. So what does this actually change about the dog near you right now? That stare it gives you, the one that sometimes feels a little too long, isn't nothing. It's a measurable biochemical event, running in both directions at the same time. The "he only loves me because I feed him" joke undersells what's going on. Feeding built the relationship over thousands of years. It didn't stay the whole mechanism. A hormone loop triggered by nothing but eye contact isn't about calories. Be careful which viral dog facts you repeat as settled science. The oxytocin loop and the caudate scan have held up, with honest caveats attached. The eyebrow story is true, but it's older and stranger than evolved just for humans, and that's not a flaw in the research. Updating a good story when better evidence shows up is what separates science from folklore. And a hand-raised wolf, loved by a devoted person from birth, still didn't produce the same hormone loop a dog produces with someone it just met an hour into a lab study. Whatever this is, it isn't only about upbringing. Something in a dog's biology was reshaped generations before that particular dog was born to make the loop possible at all. So go back to the face you looked at when this video started, the eyebrow, the eyes that go a little rounder when it wants your attention. You now know two things about that expression that most people watching a dog do it will never know. Part of it is ancient, older than dogs, older than domestication, a trait dogs simply held on to while wolves let it go, and part of it sits on top of something else entirely, a hormone loop, running through both of you that used to belong only to a mother and her newborn. Not a performance, not a trick learned for treats, some of it older than your dog's entire species, and some of it built over thousands of years to close only between the two of you. Subscribe for more deep dive stories like this, and share this with someone who'd look at their own dog differently after hearing it. If you've got a dog nearby right now, does it do the eyebrow thing at you? Tell me in the comments, and if you want to keep following this thread, watch the next video on screen.